Hey everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School football show. We're out here at Chelsea High School. Our game of the week is going to take place this Friday night, and it's the start of really a big 3-week stretch for a lot of teams as they have mostly 3 region games left. A couple teams have just 2 region games left. The Chelsea Hornets going to be one of those teams, and a big matchup this Friday night against the Homewood Patriots. They also have the week after that a big matchup with Minor as they control their own destiny to try to pick up the number 2 seed in Class 6A Region 5. So as we get down to the final couple of weeks here of region play, this Friday night it's going to be a big game for the Chelsea Hornets. Also some big games for some other teams, Briarwood, Thompson, Helena, as they all try to either lock up a region championship or a top 2 seed, which guarantees you home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. So a big few weeks coming up. Thompson's got big games to this coming Friday, as well as the Friday after. They have Vestavia Hills this Friday night at home, and then the following Friday against Mountain Brook. Those 2 teams have combined to lose just 1 game this season. The Thompson Warriors obviously sitting at number 1 and undefeated. So a couple big games also for the Thompson Warriors. I can go ahead and tell you that next Friday we will likely be out there at Warrior Stadium for that game with Mountain Brook. Those 2 teams likely to be undefeated in that matchup. So that's likely to be our game of the week next week, hence why we're here at Chelsea this week as they hit that big 2-week stretch coming up in region play, trying to lock up a top 2 seed heading in to the postseason. But last week, a lot of fun. Obviously, that Helena-Chelsea game, one of the best games we've seen this season, if not the last few years, as that game goes down to the wire. Logan Maloney kicks a field goal to win the game there for the Huskies. Chelsea had their chance late, too, missed a very long field goal after a holding penalty pushed them back. We'll talk a little bit more about that game, recap what we saw last Friday night, get into what's coming up this Friday night as well. Obviously, a lot of action to take place this week on the schedule as well. So we'll talk about all of that. But last Friday night, it was incredible to see what we saw as obviously Helena and Chelsea battled for first place in the region. Vincent, they pick up their first win of the season. Pelham also their first win of the season. And several other teams. Thompson in that in-county matchup with Spain Park, they end up winning that game, going away at the end, but it was close for a while as well. So a big matchup there. Montevallo gets back on the winning track, and Briarwood extended their winning streak to 4 games in a row, and they're now back in the hunt for region championship as well. So we'll recap all of those as we get into this week's action and break down what all we have coming up on Friday night. We do have 3 Thursday night games this week as well. We'll touch on all of those games, get you ready for those, and then what we have coming up on Friday night. But we're going to start with our game of the week between Chelsea and Homewood, which is going to take place right here behind me here at Chelsea High School. So this Friday night's obviously going to offer a big opportunity for the Chelsea Hornets coming off that 31-28 loss to Helena last week. Obviously a heartbreaking loss in that game that went down to the wire. A big rivalry in-county matchup for the top spot in Class 6A Region 5. And the Hornets came up just short, had their chance there late to kick a game-tying field goal, if not score a game-winning touchdown there after Helena took the lead with 34 seconds left. Chelsea made a big play to get back into Helena territory, but came up just short. A holding penalty pushed them back just a little bit, and were unable to tie the game or force overtime. But what an effort we saw from Chelsea, a team that struggled for the most part to this point last year, struggled to find the winning column. They've turned things around quickly, still in a good situation right now, and they have to realize that through this week of practice. It's a week where they have to get ready for what would normally be a very good Homewood football team, and still is obviously going to be a physical football team there at Homewood. But they've had a difficult schedule, a difficult stretch of play. They're sitting at 1-5 overall this season. So this is a big opportunity for Chelsea to pick up a bounce-back victory against a Homewood team that's not as good as they normally would be. And if you look at this is a really good chance for Chelsea to get back on the winning path 1 week after a very difficult loss. And I think they're going to be motivated, hungry to bounce back in this game. And this is a Homewood team coming off a 28-0 loss to Minor this past Friday night. They're now 1-5 overall, 1-2 in region play. So I think what we saw from Chelsea last week, the big takeaway that you have to go away with from that game against Helena is what we saw on the offensive side of the football. The defense has had a little bit of struggle the last couple weeks, but it's still a very physical, very fundamentally sound defensive side of the football for the Hornets that can force some turnovers and did in that game. And then on the offensive side of the ball, we saw a lot from Caleb Moore, a lot from Michael Gibbs. Caleb Moore at the quarterback position, his best game as the quarterback here at Chelsea. And Michael Gibbs, 200 yards receiving in that game. Moore ended up with 300-plus yards passing in that game. So two offensive playmakers there that really stepped up. In addition to Collier Blair, he still had close to 100 all-purpose yards, even though he didn't have a 100-plus yard rushing performance. He had 50 in the rushing game and then an extra 30-something, 30-plus in the receiving game. So another good game for him as well. If you can get that offense attacking through the air like that, have that balance, then you've got a good Chelsea team paired with that defense. And this year they're better than Homewood. It's just a matter of refocusing themselves going into this matchup, because obviously Homewood tends to be one of the more physical teams, one of the better teams in this region. This is a good chance for Chelsea to really bounce back, get that confidence back against a team that is very good despite what their record says, because their schedule has been extremely difficult to this point in the season. If you just look at things and break this game down, Chelsea's going to be the better team on paper. Offensively, Homewood scoring just 18.8 points per game, giving up 30 points per game. Chelsea, on the other hand, they flipped those numbers around. Chelsea scoring 30.5 and giving up 19.5 to this point in the season. So, and that was a difficult test last week. They proved that they could handle it, played extremely well in that matchup. I expect them to do the same back on their home field this Friday night, pick up a big win over Homewood, which really, with 1 week left in region play for them, that gives them a great chance to host an opening round playoff spot. And a team that won just 2 games all of last year, and those 2 games coming in the final 3 weeks, that's a huge turnaround in just a second year under head coach Dustin Goodwin. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, a good atmosphere out here between these two teams on Friday night, a big local Birmingham matchup between Chelsea and Homewood, which should create for a great environment and a big opportunity, like I've said several times, for Chelsea to bounce back, get where they need to be, and gain that confidence going into what could be a game against Minor that determines that number 2 seed in this region. So Chelsea really needs to bring it this week and, be prepared for that tough 2-game stretch. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, obviously the Thompson Warriors going to have a huge matchup against Vestavia Hills this Friday night. This is a Thompson team still undefeated on the season, undefeated in region play, sitting at 4-0 overall, coming off a 47-23 victory against Spain Park, a game that was close for a while, and then we saw Thompson's offense do what Thompson's offense has done so many times throughout the last few years, and they put up a bulk of points. And for the 6th consecutive win, now 6-0 overall on the season, for the 6th consecutive win, they've gone for 40 or more points this season. So every game this year, Thompson has put up 40 or more points, which is a positive sign going into this matchup against the Vestavia Hills team that is really playing really well on the defensive side of the football. You want your offense clicking going into this matchup with Vestavia Hills, coming off a 19-14 victory against Hewitt-Trussville this past Friday night, and that's the Hewitt-Trussville team that's struggling right now too. So not the most convincing of wins for Vestavia in that game, but nonetheless, they're sitting at 5-1 coming into this matchup, which makes this a crucial game for both Thompson and Vestavia. If you look at last year's game, Vestavia played Thompson closer than anybody aside from the 2 games that the Warriors lost a year ago. So this game a year ago, 21-20 final, Vestavia had their chance late to win that football game. Thompson ends up edging that one out, and if you look at the way these two teams play football, the interesting thing about this is going to be that defense versus that offense. Vestavia Hills right now on the season giving up just 9.7 points per game, and they've held every opponent to this point to 16 or less. And 3 of those 6 opponents they've held to 7 or less. So a defense that's playing outstanding football at this point in the season. But then on the other hand, you've got a Thompson offense that has been working for the last 3-4 years and just been unstoppable. And this year, even though they lost so much talent off last year's team, they've stepped in this year and picked up right where they left off with the guys that are still there. Thompson's offense scoring 48.5 points per game. They've scored 40 or more, like I said, in every game to this point in the season. And this is, if you look at the difference maker in this game, I think that obviously Vestavia's defense is going to show up. It's a matter of can they stop Thompson's offense for the entire game, because Vestavia's offense has been struggling the last 3 weeks. A team that started out the season pretty hot. They scored 49, 45, and 45 in their first 3 games of the season, but since then they haven't scored more than 19 in a game in games against Mountain Brook, Shades Valley, and Hewitt-Trussville. And that's a Hewitt-Trussville team that's normally really susceptible to points, and a Shades Valley team that resides in the 6A classification. So if you just look at that, Vestavia's offense has struggled to produce, and you're going up against the Thompson defense. While the offense gets all the praise and has been dominant and outstanding this season, the defense has also played some good football. They're young, but they have a lot of talent and a lot of athletes on that side of the football, Division I recruits over there, and it's a defense that's still giving up just 18.7 points per game to this point in the season. So Vestavia scoring 14.3 points per game their last 3 games, and Thompson giving up less than 20 this season. It's just hard for me to see Vestavia scoring enough in this game to keep up with Thompson's prolific offense. It's been so efficient, doesn't turn the football over. They've got 2 or 3 running backs that can go at you every game. They've got 3 or 4 or even 5 wide receivers and a very efficient quarterback in Sawyer Pate. I think that offense eventually wears down that successful Vestavia defense, and then I just don't see Vestavia's offense being able to keep up with that prolific scoring attack that Thompson's going to put out there. It's always a lot of fun when the crosstown rivals meet each other, and that's what's going to happen this Friday night. The Spain Park Jaguars going to travel across the town, take on the Hoover Buccaneers in one of the better rivalry matchups in the state. This rivalry really tends to be one-sided. Spain Park's only won 2 face-to-face matchups in this series all time. And when they won, they tended to be one-sided as well. But when Hoover wins, it's the same way, and they've won the bulk of them. They should be the favorite going into this matchup again. Spain Park obviously coming off the 47-23 loss to Thompson this past Friday night. They're now 2-4 overall on the season, 1-3 in region play. But the week before that, they had a bye, and then the week before that, a big win over Hewitt-Trussville. So I do think that this Spain Park team is moving in the right direction at this point in the season. Obviously, Hoover's going to be tough year in, year out. A team coming off a 44-7 win over Tuscaloosa County. They're now 5-1 overall, 3-1 in region play. And since that game against Thompson, the only game they've lost so far this season, 48-30 final in that one, they have won 3 games in a row and seem to be clicking again. This is a team that struggled with injuries to the quarterback position specifically. Obviously, Robbie Ashford went down in that game against Thompson and was supposed to be out 4 to 6 weeks, so he should be coming back here in the next couple weeks. But then Josh Lundy, the backup quarterback, went down as well. So they were down to their third-string quarterback for the last couple weeks. But last week, Josh came back. He stepped in, had a solid performance, and played really well. And so this Hoover team seems to, having faced that adversity, seems to be in a good situation now with the rest of their skill players healthy and the quarterback situation getting better as well. So we know that Hoover's going to be an extremely talented opponent, a difficult opponent for Spain Park on Friday night. So we'll see how the Jags handle that. And on paper, the Bucs are going to be the better team. They're scoring 32.2 points per game, giving up just 18.8 points per game with that record of 5-1. Spain Park obviously in a different situation, sitting at 2-4 overall, and with just that one region win over Hewitt-Trussville. But when you look at what Hoover's been dealing with, they have struggled at times to score some points with the injuries to the quarterback position. That's going to give Spain Park a chance in this one. This offense with Harrison Barker has put up points in games. They've looked at like the best offense in the state, to be honest with you, at times. And last week against Thompson, Harrison Barker, another 300-plus yard passing performance, 3 more touchdowns, but he did have 3 interceptions. That's something he can't do going up against a top-5 Hoover team. He can't have those turnovers. Those turnovers can be key. They can be crucial, and they'll kill the Jags' momentum if they have any throughout this game. But the big key here for Spain Park, their offense does give them a chance to stay in it. It's how the defense handles things. I do think this defense has gotten better specifically from the first game of the season. We saw it against Hewitt-Trussville. The defense really, for the majority of that game, is what was winning them the game. And late it did give up a couple of touchdowns, but nonetheless, it was an improved defense. And against Thompson for a while, that defense looked extremely good against the best offense in the state. So we've started to see some growth on the defensive side of the football, but they're still giving up 41.2 points per game. That's what concerns me for Spain Park going into this football game. I do think the offense can keep them in it. I do think the defense is improving, but the defense is going to have to play solid for 4 quarters if Spain Park wants to be able to pick up a big upset over one of the best teams in the state. That said, I do think this game can be a lot closer than a lot of people would have expected, either coming into the season or even over the last few weeks. I think this one could go into the second half, maybe even the fourth quarter, because Spain Park's improving on the defensive side of the ball, and they do have one of the more prolific offenses in the state. So it should be a lot of fun to watch at the Hoover Met between these two crosstown rivals, one that you always want to try to catch if you can, and I expect it to be another thrilling battle for a while, and we'll see if Spain Park can hold on, compete there in the fourth quarter of that game. So we've seen some inconsistencies at times from the Oak Mountain Eagles, but a couple weeks ago they do pick up a win against Pelham. Early in the season they pick up a win against Chelsea. Both of those games the defense played extremely well, but that came against two 6A opponents. This is the week to prove that they can do it against a 7A opponent. They take on the Tuscaloosa County Wildcats, a team that is winless on the season to this point, and we've seen Oak Mountain at least win a couple games, even though they have come against 6A opponents. The Eagles obviously coming off that difficult 42-14 loss to Mountain Brook this past Friday night. That's a very good Mountain Brook team, ranked in the top 5 of the ASWA football poll, a team that's still undefeated on the season, so no shame in losing that game, but this is a week where they have to bounce back, pick up a big victory against a struggling Tuscaloosa County Wildcats team that comes into this matchup having lost 44-7 to Hoover last week, and like I said, 0-6 overall, 0-4 in region play. So Oak Mountain really needs to assert themselves early in this game, prove that they are the better team, not let Tuscaloosa County hang around and think that they have a chance. If Oak Mountain can come out and do that in this game, that lets the doubt creep into Tuscaloosa County's minds, a team that hasn't won a game so far this season. And just judging from the numbers, this is a Tuscaloosa County team scoring about 14 points per game, Oak Mountain scoring about 17 points per game. And on the defensive side of the ball, Tuscaloosa County giving up 38.2 points per game, Oak Mountain giving up 31.2 points per game. So judging from both sides of the ball, Oak Mountain looks like a team that should be about a 7 to 10 point favorite in this game. And I think that could lead to a compelling matchup. Two teams that have struggled at times, but at the same time, that could lend itself to what could be a very good football game between two teams I think that are on the rise in this region, but that just play in the most difficult region in the state, to be honest with you. They have hit the gauntlet. They have matchups against Thompson, Hoover, Vestavia Hills, Mountain. It's just a very difficult region. These are two teams on the verge. They're very physical and both run fun styles that you'll want to watch, and that's the key for Oak Mountain, a team that does run that option attack. I think that's going to be tough for Tuscaloosa County to deal with going into this matchup. Both teams obviously hungry for a win, but I think Oak Mountain's seen that success. They felt it a little bit throughout the season. The defense has honestly gotten better as the season's gone along. They faced some difficult tests, but I do think that they're going to be up to the challenge going into this matchup. And you've also got the three-headed monster that can run the football. Evan Smith, the quarterback there, sophomore there this year there at Oak Mountain. Judah Tate and Jonathan Bennett as well. Jonathan Bennett coming off a 100-plus yard rushing performance last week against a very good Mountain Brook defense. So I think they'll carry that confidence over running the football against this Tuscaloosa County team that is giving up close to 40 points per game. I think we're going to see one of Oak Mountain's best offensive performances of the year, and you also have an Oak Mountain team that lost this game last year in a tight 10-7 matchup, a game that Oak Mountain should have won a year ago. Now they get them on their home field this year. I think you're going to see an Oak Mountain team that's going to want redemption. We saw what happened against Pelham a couple weeks ago in a game that they thought they should have won last year and they lost. I think you're going to see a similar situation there at Herdmont Park on Friday night as the Eagles look for redemption against the Wildcats. What a win it was for the Helena Huskies this past Friday night. 31-28 victory thanks to that 30-yard field goal with 34 seconds left from Logan Maloney in that victory. So the Helena Huskies, they take over first place in the Class 6A Region 5 standings, which has proven to be a tall task this season. Two teams last year that were struggling to this point in the season. They were battling for first place in the region last Friday night. The Helena Huskies come out on top. Chelsea now in second in that region, but what a battle it was. Like I said, back and forth. Helena in that second half took a large lead, and it looked like they were going to pull away in that game. Ended up being up 28-14 at one point. But then Chelsea came back with 14 unanswered points, tied that game 28-28 in the fourth quarter with about 3 minutes left. But Helena just marched right down the field, kicked that field goal, took the 31-28 lead. Chelsea came back, completed a long pass, almost got into a close field goal range situation, ended up having to settle for a long one that missed. But what a football game that was, as the same two teams are about to go at it tonight here as I record the video on Monday night in freshman and JV football as well. So two teams, fun rivalry matchup. That was a lot of fun. But now Helena sitting in first in the region, obviously have won 4 games in a row now, 5-1 overall, 3-1 in region play. But they've got to turn around quickly, get over the emotions of that win last Friday night, because this week, not a difficult matchup, but if you get caught looking at the emotions, taking on that victory and what it meant, then you fall behind going into a Thursday night matchup against Carver Birmingham. Now, look, this is a team that Helena is better than. They should be able to handle this game with ease, but at the same time, you've got to stay focused. You've got to go into this game with that same mentality, because you have 3 games left in region play, and 3 games separate you from finishing not only undefeated in region play, but as region champions. They control their own destiny, and all 3 of those opponents, none of them have a record above 500 at this point in the season. So big opportunities for the Helena Huskies ahead for them to be crowned region champions. So you've got to keep your focus going into these last few games. And like I said, this is a Thursday night matchup coming off that physical, emotional game against Chelsea. They've got to turn around quickly and be ready for this game. Carver comes in off a 31-20 loss to Pelham. They're 1-5 on the season, 1-2 in region play. So obviously struggling, but still a difficult spot at this point in the season. But Carver's defense giving up 37 points per game. That's what's going to go against them. Last week, Pelham running the football. This was a Pelham football team that put up 200 rushing yards, all behind Gabe Gamble, had 250 rushing yards in that game. Also, Xavier Langford had 100-plus rushing yards, close to 150 himself running the football for Pelham. Looking at what Helena did against Chelsea, Marquise Johnson just lit up that Chelsea defense running the football last week, close to 300 yards on the ground. I expect that to be the difference in this game. Like I said, Carver's defense close to 40 points per game they're giving up, struggle stopping the run. I think you're going to see a Helena defense that loves to run the football. They're going to feast on that behind Luke Stamba at quarterback, behind Marquise Johnson at running back. Even beyond that, they have guys that can run the football as well. So you're going to see a Helena team come out, pound the ball. Defense is plenty good enough to shut down this Carver team that's only scoring about 20 points per game. So I expect us to see Helena really assert themselves on the ground early in this game, build a lead, continue to run the football, pull away behind the defense's effort as well. So I do expect Helena to win. You just can't get caught up on the emotions of last week, especially with this being a short week, a Thursday night game, and just a couple weeks of region play left. You don't want to slip and lose your focus at this point with the region crown on the horizon. It was a special week last week for the Pelham Panthers, senior night, and they come through. They pick up their first victory of the 2019 football season, 31-20 over Carver Birmingham. So a big showing from the Panthers in that game. Like I said, their first win of the season. They're 1-6 overall, 1-3 in region play, but nonetheless, those seniors stepped up, and it was a special game out there at Pelham High School as they do pick up their first win of the season. Now they move into a matchup this week against Jackson Nolan. They played last week on Thursday. A week later, another Thursday night game against a team that they have a chance to beat again. So they could extend this to a 2-game winning streak after struggling to an 0-6 start to start the season. So a very big opportunity against a Jackson Nolan team. They're coming off a bye, and in their last game they did win 41-29 over a team from Mississippi. That being said, this is a team that has struggled, a team a lot of people thought could bid for the region championship this year in Class 6A Region 5, but they have struggled. Pelham has struggled. This is a big matchup. Both teams come in having won their last football game while also having struggled throughout the season. Like I said, Jackson Nolan with that 41-29 loss, now 2-4 overall and 0-3 in region play, and their only other win of the season came by 2 points against a team in 5A Fairfield. So Jackson Nolan's had their fair share of struggles. They're going to be looking off of that bye week to extend their win streak to 2 games in a row, just as Pelham is. But I've been impressed by the way Pelham has grown, not given up throughout the season. There has been plenty of opportunity for them to give up because they've lost some difficult games. They haven't shown much on the defensive side of the football. While the offense has been inconsistent, they've shown flashes. I think that's what we see this week. The offense last week took a turn for the better, and it was impressive to watch. Xavier Langford, the senior quarterback, had one of his best rushing performances of the year, 150-plus yards. Also threw for close to 80 yards with an additional touchdown. So 2 touchdowns for him, more than 200 all-purpose yards. Gabe Gamble at the running back position, 250-plus rushing yards, 2 touchdowns for him on the ground. And then they do have some athletic playmakers out wide that Langford can throw to if you do respect that run game too much, including his younger brother, William Langford, as well. So this is a Pelham offense that's growing up. They have a lot of talent, a lot of young playmakers on that side of the ball. If the offensive line is playing well, it's a Pelham offense that can really score some points. I think that's what we're going to see this week against Jackson Nolan, a team that came into the season with a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but they've just struggled over there, giving up close to 30 points per game on the defensive side of the football. Now, Pelham's also giving up a lot of points defensively, 32.6 points per game this season, but the last couple weeks they've shown improvement, they've looked better, and they've played good for a quarter or two throughout the season. So starting to put it together for a complete game the last 2 weeks, giving up 21 to Oak Mountain, a 7A team 2 weeks ago, 20 last week to Carver Birmingham in that game where they came back and scored 21 unanswered to win 31-20. So we saw the defense help play a part in that comeback effort. So Pelham right now starting to get some things figured out, going up against a Jackson Nolan team that hasn't been as good as we expected this year. I do think that Pelham will have plenty of chances to win this game, just as they did against Carver Birmingham. Should be a very similar type game as we saw last week. We'll see if Pelham can get off to a little bit faster start. If that's the case, I think they can easily win this football game. If they have to come from behind, that could make it a little bit more difficult. But either way, last week it was special to see them pick up that win on senior night, and they just seem to be getting some momentum, some motivation moving forward. I like what I'm seeing from Pelham regardless at this point in the season. I think they do have a good shot against Jackson Nolan on Thursday night as they do move forward, get some more confidence heading in to the rest of the season with some big matchups down the road as well. So we'll see what head coach Tom Causey and the Pelham Panthers can do this Friday night or this Thursday night against Jackson Nolan, but it should be a lot of fun as they go on the road, try to pick up a second win in a row. We have one more 6A game to talk about. That's going to be the Calera Eagles traveling to Opelika this Friday night, and it's going to be a tough go for the Eagles in that game. Obviously, coming off that loss 46-27 to Selma, a game where they had their chances to come back, but they had 3 turnovers in 4 possessions between the second and third quarter. That became way too costly, and they just couldn't never overcome that. Put together a little bit of a run in the second half and in the fourth quarter, but just couldn't overcome the penalties and mistakes there that put them behind the 8 ball. They're now 1-5 overall, 0-3 in region play at this point in the season. And this week, it's not going to be easy. Taking on one of the best teams in the 6A classification in Opelika, a team sitting at 5-1 overall, 3-0 in region play. And that's an Opelika team that their only loss to this point in the season has come to defending 7A state champion Central Phoenix City. So we've just seen so much inconsistency. We've seen mistakes. We've seen turnovers, and that's cost Calera in just about every game to this point in the season. If they can put it together for an entire game, then they're going to have their chance to win it in the fourth quarter. We've seen that a couple of times early in the season, but they've just been too inconsistent throughout several of their games, most of their games to this point in the season. And, you know, they're just not scoring. This is an Opelika team that's just not scoring a ton of points at this point, which gives Calera their chance. Opelika scoring just 26.7 points per game, but they've played such a difficult schedule to this point and still are only giving up 22 points per game. They've played one of the most difficult schedules in the 6A classification this year. 2 7A opponents. They've beaten one of them in Auburn. So they're battle-tested going up against a Calera team that's just searching for any sort of success at this point. But with Calera scoring just 19 points per game, giving up 35 points per game, they're going to have to really turn things around in a hurry if they want to be able to pick up a win in this matchup. Opelika probably the toughest team they've played to this point and they haven't been able to find that success. So we'll see how they handle this game. Obviously, going on the road to one of the toughest opponents that they'll play this year, a good chance, a good opportunity for them to see where they are moving forward into the rest of the season. Because if they can keep this one close, last year, a game that was really close at the half, they only lost 30-10, and Opelika was really good last year too. So we could see something like that if we can see Kalira put it together. If they can limit those turnovers and the mistakes that's cost them in so many games to this point in the season, and I think we could see them have a chance in the second half of the season, or in the second half of this game. At the same time, they just haven't proven it on the field yet. We'll have to see them step up and prove that in their biggest game to date against Opelika. It's been an impressive turnaround for the Briarwood Lions. Started the season 0-2. Since then, they've won 4 games in a row, and they just continue to get better and better on both sides of the ball. Coming off a 48-16 win this past Friday night against John Carroll, now 4-2 overall and 3-1 in region play after that 0-2 start to the season. So a great turnaround for the Briarwood Lions under first-year head coach Matthew Forrester. Last week at halftime, they honored former legendary coach Fred Yancey in a special halftime ceremony on homecoming. So a special week last week. They played like it in that dominant 48-16 victory over the Cavaliers. This week they hit the road, a short week. They have a Thursday night game. They'll be taking on Parker on the road this Thursday night in another region game. It's probably their most difficult test since their loss earlier this season to Pleasant Grove. They lost that game 26-14, and while this isn't the same type of team in Parker, a team that will give up some points, it will be the most difficult test for Briarwood since that game as they look to play and pick up a 5th consecutive win. Parker coming off a 42-20 victory this past Friday night against Fairfield. They're 3-3 overall, 2-2 in region play, a team that's yet to win 2 games in a row, which could be key in this one as they've struggled with that consistency as well. They have played a difficult schedule, though, as Briarwood has at times. The last few weeks it's gotten a little bit easier. There's been some tough tests in there as well. But this week against Parker, this is a chance for Briarwood to prove going into matchups with Ramsey, going into matchup with Fairfield in a couple weeks. Those are the 2 big games left following this one. We'll see how Briarwood can handle that game against Parker on Friday night. Parker's offense scoring just 31 points per game, giving up 30 on the defensive side of the football. So giving up too many points for me, while Briarwood does struggle to score sometimes offensively. I think that they're starting to hit their role with quarterback Chris Venzina, freshman there. He's really started playing well. And then Luke Pruitt at the running back position has also shown that he's one of the best running backs in the state, behind one of the better offensive lines as well. So the offense starting to click, already have one of the better defenses in the state. I just don't see Parker scoring a ton of points in this game. I see Briarwood being able to at least score enough paired with their defense. They'll score enough points in this game against that susceptible Parker defense to be able to pull away, I think, for a 5th consecutive win. The Montevallo Bulldogs returned to form coming off a bye week. 2 weeks ago, they lose that game 84-30 to American Christian. They had an extra week to let that sit. Last week against West Blockton, another tight game for a while, a game that was tied late in that contest. Jamarius Carter, he gets the game-winning catch there that was really probably the difference in that game, but his touchdown, they put him up by 6 points. West Blockton came right back down, went all the way down the field, but then inside the 5-yard line, Montevallo able to pick up a pick 6 that put that game away as West Blockton was looking to either tie or go ahead and win that game. So a big pick 6 that could possibly save Montevallo's season as far as it goes to picking up a top 2 seed in the playoffs, as they do sit in the driver's seat to still get home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. They go on to win that game 62-50, now 4-2 overall, 2-1 in region play. And this week, they should be able to win with these. They shouldn't have to sweat this one as long as they keep their focus. They get that hunger and that desire back that we've seen at times throughout the season. Been a little inconsistent with it. The defense has struggled at times, but this week none of that should matter. Going up against Sumter Central, a team that's sitting at 0-6 on the season, coming off a 55-0 loss to American Christian. They're scoring just 11.7 points per game, giving up 43.7 points per game. So a team that's struggling on both sides of the ball, close to 50 they're giving up, and close to just 10 that they're scoring per game. The most concerning part about that, I don't even care. Honestly don't care if Sumter is able to score points in this game. They'll score some points, but still not a ton because their offense isn't very good. The thing that's concerning is the defensive side of the football for Sumter Central, giving up 43.7 points per game against a Montevallo offense that's scoring 48.7 points per game and has scored over 53 times this year. You got to expect Montevallo's offense show up, pull away in this game, and pick up another easy win thanks to the offensive side of the football. The defense can at least show some improvement this week, a team that they really should dominate on that side of the ball as well. I'll be looking to see if they can do that, but either way, I expect Montevallo to win big in this one and still sit in the driver's seat to pick up the number 2 seed in that region. Just 2 more games to touch on real quick. We'll start with our last AHSAA game of the week. That's going to be Vincent this Friday night. They take on Horseshoe Bend at home, and a team that struggled throughout the early part of the season. Last week, they pick up their first victory of the 2019 season, 51-8 over Central Coosa, a game that they were easily going to win. I expected them to win that one for their first of the year. Expected them to win 2 weeks ago. They struggled a couple weeks ago, but bounced back. They win this game big, 51-8. A game they were leading 51-0 at the half. So they played 2 4-minute quarters in the second half. Vincent, they win that one 51-8. Now 1-5 overall, 1-2 in region play, and they should be able to make it 2 wins in a row this Friday night, taking on Horseshoe Bend, a team that is coming off a 38-20 loss over 1A Lochapoka. They are coming off a bye week, which should give them a little bit of a boost going into this matchup, be a little bit fresher. But this is a team in Horseshoe Bend that's averaging just 10.3 points per game. They've been shut out 3 times and have been held to 6 or less in 4 games so far this season. So the offense at Horseshoe Bend just not playing very well at this point in the season. I expect us to see something similar to what we saw last week from Vincent, giving up around 8 to 13 points. And on the offensive side of the ball, maybe a little bit more of a struggle on that side of the ball this week, but at the same time, this is a Vincent offense that has continued to progress throughout the season. I expect them to be just fine in this game as well. Expect them to have a 2-game winning streak at the end of Friday night, and more importantly, a 2-game winning streak in region play. Tay McGregor, he's playing fantastic football right now, did just about everything for Vincent this past Friday night. We'll talk a little bit more about him in our SCR Stars of the Week segment in just a minute, but I do expect Vincent to pick up their 2nd win in a row in region play. The final game that we have to touch on this week, that's going to be the Evangel Lightning, another ACSC game coming off a dominant 80-35 win over rival Ezekiel this past Friday night. Sit in the driver's seat now to host the ACSC State Championship. That'll happen with they'll guarantee that with a win this Friday night over Lighthouse Academy, another 8-man ACSC opponent. A team that's coming off a 35-12 victory over East Central Homeschool. They're 6-2 on the season, but at the same time, the team that Evangel beat 80-35 this past Friday night in Ezekiel, Lighthouse struggled with Ezekiel, losing 58-46. So they gave up 58 to Ezekiel. I expect this Evangel offense that scored 80 last week has been impressive all year, came into the season with a ton of talent on that side of the ball. I expect them to have another big performance, another big showing in this game. That's really all you need to know is that the loss for Lighthouse against Ezekiel, they're giving up 29.4 points per game on the defensive side of the football. I expect Evangel to score a ton of points again, coming off an 80-point performance last Friday. They'll roll into this one. They'll pick up another ACSC win, a conference win, and be the favorite, the home field advantage favorite there going into the ACSC State Championship here in just a few weeks. So expect a big night again on the offensive side of the football from the Lightning. Now it's time for our final segment of the show. As we mentioned, our SCR Stars of the Week, the best of the best from this past Friday night, a big week of region play. And there's a ton of unbelievable stats that we're able to break down and see from this past Friday night's action. We'll start in 7A, work our way down through some remarkable numbers. And we'll start with the Thompson Warriors. Sawyer Pate, another efficient performance there for the Warriors as he leads Thompson to a win over Spain Park, 239 yards passing, 4 touchdowns on 23 of 30 passing. So just an efficient performance as he continues to lead the offense. No interceptions in that game. I believe still just the 1 interception on the season. So he's been unbelievable, to say the least, from an efficiency standpoint and also from a touchdown standpoint so far this season for the Warriors. His top target all year long has been Mike Petway. That continued to be the case in the win over the Jags. Petway, 8 receptions, 123 yards, 3 touchdowns in that win over Spain Park, a guy that has been unbelievable to watch the last 2 years, and I think still flies under the radar somehow, possibly because of all the talent on Thompson's offensive side of the football, but he is an unbelievable wide receiver and a very trustworthy guy for Pate to throw to. So those 2 guys, another stellar performance. We'll see how they handle these next 2 weeks against very solid defenses in Mountain Brook and Vestavia Hills. Harrison Barker, he's been one of the most prolific passers all year long for the Jaguars. Another strong performance, 312 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 29 of 41 passing in that loss to Thompson. Kept them in that game for a long time. 3 interceptions in the matchup, which ended up being a big difference in the outcome. That being said, there was a lot on his shoulders. He had to do the bulk of the carrying of Spain Park in that matchup, and he kept them in it for the long haul until Thompson was able to turn those turnovers into points, do some things in the second half to pull away. But another special performance from Barker as he continues to lead the Jaguars' offense. Also in 7A, Jonathan Bennett, the Oak Mountain Eagles, against a very physical and tough Mountain Brook defense, goes for 128 yards and 1 touchdown rushing last week. Tough loss for the Eagles, but if he can keep that going, along with Judah Tate and Evan Smith there at Oak Mountain, I expect them to get a big bounce-back victory against Tuscaloosa County this Friday night. Now to the 6A classification, and specifically between the 2 teams that were battling for first in the region, Chelsea and Helena. What an unbelievable back-and-forth game. A ton of offensive numbers that were just unbelievable when you looked at that you could look at after that game that just wowed me at the end of the night. We'll start with Marquise Johnson, the running back there at Helena. Wanted the ball. He feasted on it, and that's a big reason why Helena was able to come out on top, the way he ran the ball there, really from the start of the game, but late in that game, in the fourth quarter, he wanted the ball, and he turned out some big gains. He finished the night with 292 yards on 36 carries, 2 touchdowns. So if he continues to run the football like that, this is going to be a tough offense to stop. Already very physical, already loves to run the football with a great defense. If he can continue to reel off runs like that each and every week the rest of the season, it's tough to see them losing, especially in the 3 region games that they have left against teams that have just a combined 3 wins. So I expect him to continue to be big moving forward. And you can't talk about that game without mentioning Logan Maloney, who kicked the game-winning 30-yard field goal in the final 34 seconds. And earlier in the game, missed a field goal, bounces back in the final minute, kicks the game winner. A special moment for Maloney there at Helena. On the other side of that game, though, Chelsea had some unbelievable numbers from quarterback Caleb Moore as well as wide receiver Michael Gibbs. Caleb Moore finished the night 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns in that game for the Hornets. And then Gibbs, also a special performance, 202 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. That connection has shown that they can be dynamic at other times throughout the season. They've had a couple of other good games. That was their best of the season. But over the last few weeks, we've really seen them form a very special relationship. If that's the case moving forward, especially with running back Collier Blair, a solid offensive line that's really playing some good football right now, this is a Chelsea offense that's going to continue to get better. And going into the playoffs, that could be scary because they already do have a very physical and good defense. So with that offense continuing to get better, and you see guys like Caleb Moore and Michael Gibbs stepping up, there's a couple of other athletic playmakers that can step up and make big plays too. This is a Chelsea offense that could really be something we're talking about heading into the postseason. So solid stuff from Moore and Gibbs there. And then other game in the 6A classification that had some standout performances, that was the Pelham win on senior night last week against Carver Birmingham on a Thursday night. Gabe Gamble, another guy that just reeled off yards at the running back position, 250 yards on 23 carries and 2 touchdowns in that first win of the season for the Pelham Panthers. He was joined by a solid performance from quarterback Xavier Langford, a senior there at Pelham. Langford, he ended the night with 124 yards rushing and 85 yards passing, a touchdown both running and throwing as well. So 2 TDs, 200 plus all-purpose yards for Langford. Those two guys have had a couple of really good games this year, and when they do, they play really well. They did really well against Chelsea a few weeks ago as well. If they can do that again on Friday night, this Friday night with a game against Jackson Hole, and I expect Pelham to not only be in that game but also have a great chance to come out with a victory. Moving on to the 5A classification, then we have a few more that we'll mention beyond that. But in the 5A classification with the Briarwood Lions, Christopher Vizina as well as running back Luke Pruitt. Those two guys in the backfield there at Briarwood have been putting on a show, but specifically this past Friday. Luke Pruitt's gone over 100 the last few weeks in a row. This past Friday night, another big performance, 24 carries, 141 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. That's just running the football. Also added 46 yards receiving, so came close to 200 yards all-purpose in that game for the Lions as they pick up their 4th win in a row. And more importantly, freshman quarterback Christopher Vizina, if he can come along and pair nicely with Pruitt, that's going to be dynamic for this team. They have such a good offensive line. If Christopher Vizina can come along, find a guy to throw to each week, that's going to make teams respect both the passing game and the running game. And he finished 10 of 13, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown passing for Briarwood in that win over John Carroll. So he's gaining a lot of confidence moving forward. I expect him to continue to get better. If that offense can really take that next step with the defense they have, this could be a very dangerous Briarwood team when they get to the likes of Ramsey, Fairfield, and then the postseason, because they have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the football, and Luke Pruitt's proven that he's one of the best backs in the state. If they get any resemblance of a passing game moving forward, they become a very legitimate threat for a 5A state championship. Moving on to the 4A classification, the Montevallo Bulldogs, another strong performance from a few guys. Deion Gilliland continuing to do impressive things, running the football there, 10 carries, 165 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also added a 65-yard kickoff return for a touchdown to earn an SCR Star of the Week, as he was a big factor in Montevallo picking up that win over West Blockton. Joseph Anderson, his running mate in the backfield, added 4 touchdown carries in that game as well. So those two combined for 6 touchdowns. Impressive showing from the 2 running backs there at Montevallo. And then to Marjorie Purnell, the pick 6 that saved the game. West Blockton inside the 10-yard line throwing for the touchdown. If they score there, that ties the game, and then they have a chance with either a 2-point conversion or a field goal to win that game. So that pick 6 really saved the day for Montevallo. He took it 98 yards to the house to seal the game for the Bulldogs, a big region win as they bounce back after the loss to American Christian 2 weeks prior to that game. Final player we'll talk about in the 2A classification of the Vincent Yellow Jackets, Tay McGregor. An incredible performance from him as the Yellow Jackets pick up their first victory of the season. Had 4 touchdowns, including a pick 6 and a 65-yard kickoff return. So he did it on the offensive side of the football, he did it on the defensive side of the football, and he did it on special teams, and he earned an SCR Star of the Week because of his effort. And there was a ton of good performances from other Vincent players as well in that first win of the season over Central Coosa. They take them down 51-8. So a special week for all those guys, probably the best week numbers-wise that we've seen this year from that talent, and I expect to continue to see those piling up moving forward in some big games over the next few weeks as well. That's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School football show. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Wanted to make sure to bring this show to you a little earlier in the week, since we do have 3 Thursday night games. Get you set for what we have coming up, as we do have Helena, Pelham, and Briarwood all on the road Thursday night against Birmingham area schools. So make sure, try to get out and support those teams and those matchups on Thursday night. And then Friday night, another full slate of exciting action taking place featuring county teams and big region matchups, including Spain Park Hoover and a crosstown rivalry matchup, Thompson, Vestavia, with a combined 1 loss between those 2 teams. So going to be a lot of fun this Friday night. We'll have it all for you. Shelby County pregame show live here from Chelsea High School on Friday night before the game between 5 and 5:30. Make sure you tune into that on the Shelby County Reporter Facebook page to get your last-minute info heading into all of the action on Friday night. We'll have plenty of content leading up to those games with the predictions, and then we'll be ready after the game with all the coverage, photos, and stories from a great night of high school football. We'll see you out here from Chelsea High School on Friday night. But for now, that's going to do it from here. Our game of the week between Chelsea and Homewood.